all the investor of the GTV, and we are all the investor of the GTV. And today we are protest again the shutdown of the GTV. And actually, the GTV. The SEC and DOJ has been weaponized by the CCP, and they accuse us for it is fraud. And GTV is being shut down now.
Wow. So Austin, I know it's raining outside, and how many days have you guys been protesting in front of the Capitol Hill?
Oh, today is our fourth day, and we are planning to protest lasting 3 months. And here today, our GTV, one of the most precious social media which produce the truth, the media platform nowadays, is being shut down. It's actually giving a big shock. And here today, and so that's the reason why we are here to protest today.
How come the SEC does not investigate into the Twitter's money and financial ties with the CCP? That's the fraud. And we have made many complaints, but SEC takes no action. But it only takes a handful of CCP agents of false accusation for SEC to launch such a massive political persecution against the Chinese dissidents in China and in America. What is your reaction, Natalie?
I'm not shocked. You know, this is how the CCP works. The reason why the CCP invests so much money, so much manpower in these political warfare operations is precisely so you can have decisions by the SEC like this that goes after GTV, not just the investors, but really your movement as a whole. This is why the Chinese Communist Party does what it does, and this is why, you know, a lot of these American institutions really are American in name only, right? Whether they're paymasters of the Chinese Communist Party, the broader globalist movement, they really have been weaponized to go after you guys, and you don't really see this with any other or most other Chinese Communist Party dissidents, right? It's always been you guys, and whether the law firms, the SEC, the mainstream media, it's always you guys. And while it's certainly a hard pill to swallow, I think, you know, seeing you guys protest is so wonderful. And no, the reason why they're going after you is because you are effective. So it's a weird and twisted badge of honor, but a badge of honor nonetheless.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Welcome to the CCP Reality Check live stream. I'm your host, David Starwatcher, and tonight we're going back to the special series, which we always talk about, the CCP's infiltration to the United States judicial system. And for tonight's topic, you already see it here. It's called the CCP, the US Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and the Department of Justice. So you may wonder, what is the relationship between the CCP and the two other institutions? Well, we will start from looking into a very recent case. So let's talk about what is the GTV, the center of the case. GTV was a platform invested by a sheer number of Chinese dissidents who are against the CCP regime, range from grassroots to elites inside and outside of the communist China, with the amount of investment amounted to $434,134,141. That is a sheer amount. And you might wonder, what drives these investors or these dissidents so much of what force is driving them to invest in this platform? Well, the main reason behind the investors' enthusiasm was because of the common goal of having a platform where people could express themselves freely without fear and censorship. Of course, that is very important. And also, in the early stages of the GTV media platform, many Chinese people shared the truth of the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, the cover-up and the purposeful spread of and to review the cover-ups and to, of course, review the CCP's information campaign that is composed of purposefully spreading false information, which resulted in an unprecedented worldwide pandemic. Also, in that platform, the Chinese dissidents exposed the unforgivable crimes of the CCP, such as the Uyghur genocide, the repression and killing of the Hong Kong people, the persecution of Chinese dissidents, and the CCP's mass infiltration into the US government, educational, and financial sectors. Okay, so now we've already seen what is GTV. We are now going to look into have a quick overview of the SEC's GTV case. So the start of the case stemmed from the CCP's action of sending out its agents to infiltrate into the GTV's initial development and investment process, with these agents only made a fraction of investments made. Keep in mind that CCP would not tolerate any kind of power or platform or actions or any personnel or anything that has the ability to threaten its role. Then the CCP agents made false claims of fraud against GTV to the SEC, which is the Securities Exchange Commission, with the CCP used coercion and put several, it's also including the CCP also has used the coercion and put several investors under duress and threats, so that these investors will be making false accusations against the GTV against the investors' own will. And during the investigation process, there's something happened that the Doorway News, an intelligence instrument of the CCP's Ministry of State Security, illegally obtained and published bank account information. The reason why it is illegal is because this information was and is all forbidden from disclosure to the public under the law. While strangely, PAX, an entity subsidiary to the PAG chaired by Wei Jianshan, a high-ranking CCP spy, used such information that is being published on Doorway News to continue to persecute Chinese dissidents under the instruction of the CCP. And the Chinese dissident here, of course, is Mr. Mao Squaw. And Wei Jianshan, the PAG, is always persecuting these Chinese dissidents under the instruction of the CCP. So what you may wonder, what comes to the final of the GTV case? Well, the GTV finally reached a settlement with the SEC, including disgorgement and the creation of a fair fund operated by J&E. But remember, the final settlement here with this SEC did not prove fraud by the GTV. Well, later, however, the GTV was forced to close down. And after 1 year since the settlement, the SEC still has not returned the money received from GTV back to many investors. Or to be more exact, here it is the fair fund operated by the J&D still failed or still has not returned the money received from GTV back to many investors. And such a delay, which is made intentionally, caused great distress and financial hardships to these investors of the GTV. So you may wonder, David, so there are CCP agents talking here tonight, and we always knew that your live stream is talking about revealing these actions. So who are you going to talking about tonight? Well, I'm going to talking about the two major CCP agents involved in the SEC GTV case as the first part of our live stream. So the major two of them are Wei Jianshan and his PAG. I count them as one. And then is the Doorway. Of course, let's continue to looking in the first culprit, the first CCP agent here tonight. Of course, you already know who's Wei Jianshan because we have been covering him many times in this special series live stream. But we just do a quick review. Who is Wei Jianshan? So Wei Jianshan is the CEO of the Pacific Alliance Group, which is we already known by the short handwriting as the PAG. But he is a spy, belongs to the 6th Bureau of International Secrets of the CCP, which the CCP here stands for the Chinese Communist Party. Wei Jianshan himself enjoys a high level of security clearance in the CCP's Ministry of State Security. Moreover, Wei Jianshan directly reports to Qi Shanwang, the vice president of the CCP regime. Wei Jianshan is from a family closely related to the CCP, in which his parents were both staff members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the CCP, and Shan received specific care from Mao Zedong when he was young. During the SEC GTV case, PAX, now this is very interesting, the PAG subsidiary PAX said it took its evidences from a public website called Doorway News, and Doorway was an instrument of the CCP's Ministry of State Security. Now you may start wondering, why is PAX or why is PAG involved in this case? Well then, after you hearing my brief introduction or what is Doorway, you might start having a clear clue. What is Doorway and what is Doorway's connection to the CCP? Doorway was a website founded in 1999, but under the initiative of Ma Jian, the then vice minister of the CCP's Ministry of State Security. And also, the initial investors included an agent affiliated to the CCP's Ministry of State Security called Li Lu. Then, of course, at this point, I'll just pause a little bit because I think you already started wondering, oh, wow, this seems like there are some involvement from CCP's Ministry of State Security. But let's continue. In 2009, Doorway was bought by Yu Pinhai. And Yu Pinhai was the founder of another pro-CCP media in Hong Kong called Hong Kong 01. Now, on April 26, 2022, by the way, I will expand this date a little bit. This date is after GTV filing an appeal to the that asking saying revealing the illegal obtaining of the information by Doorway. Several days after that filing, Doorway closed down suddenly, officially citing technical and content adjustment as the reasons. But according to the past live stream of Mr. Miles Guo, Doorway was in fact an intelligence processing instrument that was operated under the Ministry of State Security, and the close down was related to Doorway being found to have involved in helping the CCP to sabotage the GTV. So now we have to point out two things. With all these facts listed, we now have established that Doorway has connections to the CCP, but there's also one question though. However, why would a news website get involved in the CCP's plot against the Chinese dissidents abroad? Well, we already listed there are some connections. There are clear connections between Doorway and the CCP's Ministry of State Security. So now we're going to have an overview of the publishing of the GTV's commercially confidential information. Let's see what happened here. This is an appeal. This is from the preliminary statement from the appeal made by GTV to the appellate division of the New York Supreme Court. So here I circled out two parts. This appeal results from GTV's effort to obtain pre-action discovery under CPLR Section 3102C, that's a law, in order to uncover the source of a leak of its highly confidential financial information. And the second one says the information was available on a Chinese website operated by DW News. The DW News is the Doorway News, not the Deutsche Welle, but it's Doorway News. And among this first part, in here, it mentioned that the forensic examination conducted after the leak find out that the GTV system did not have any kind of security breaches from hacking or several other computer hacking hacktivist activities. So with that in mind, let's move down to see there's a very interesting connection here. Now, it says you may wonder what is this confidential banking information is about. It is actually for responding a non-public, highly confidential federal regulatory investigation. But remember, this is by law. these information are not supposed to be disclosed as it is being backed up by the other red circles below it. It says fiduciary duty had and continues to have contractual and or fiduciary obligations to GTV to keep information confidential. But that means that no one is able to leak them, well, unless there sabotaging happens. So let's move on to the next page. So now you will see the GTV's petition for pre-action discovery against PAX. Now that's get very interesting here, because the PAX, here it wrote, over the course of several months, GTV repeatedly asked PAX to reveal how it obtained the confidential banking information, but its requests went unanswered. Now, PAX doesn't answer the question asked by the GTV, where did they get this information? This is something, well, bear this in mind, because let us ask this question. If the PAX has nothing to hide, why it refused to answer this question asked by the GTV? So now, I think from these facts that we listed here about, also what I think, but at least from what we saw here, there's a very clear involvement between the PAX, the doorway, and yes, and of course the CCP that is operating behind. And now we will not only look into the case of the GTV and the SEC, we're going to look into another example that will send a shrill down to our spies to see how horrifying the extent of the CCP's infiltration to the US judicial system is. That is, as I already written down here, it says the CCP's infiltration and corruption of the US judicial system does not limited in the GTV case alone. Because let's move down to see another CCP's department that involved in this unrestricted lawfare and infiltration against the US judicial system. Well, what is the CCP's United Front Work Department? It's a little bit mouthful. The CCP's United Front Work Department, UFWD in Chinese as 统一战线工作部, is an intelligence department with 40,000 personnel in strength and undisclosed budget. That means the budget is sky high, is the limit for the budget. So it has an aim. So what is M? It aims to influence elites and powerful figures in the following countries. So now the UFWD has suppressed overseas Chinese protesters against the CCP, according to the United States China Economic and Security Review Commission in 2018. This is not my words, this is from the words of the American governmental department. Also, the UFWD, the United Front Work Department, has engaged in all kinds of actions against all expressions critical to the CCP. The UFWD had been found to interfere with the 2019 Canadian federal election. And the last one, not from my own words again, this is from the words of the UK Security Service, the MI5, issued an interference warning against the United Front Work Department activities in the UK. So that basically placed CCP's UFWD, United Front Work Department, as an intelligence apparatus. One of the many intelligence apparatus of the CCP against the free world. So now, let's take a look on how this department is infiltrating the United States judicial system and colluding with the DOJ to prosecuting the Chinese dissidents. Before I move on, I would like to do a brief introduction about G Club. G Club is a club that is set up by the like-minded Chinese dissidents who are aiming to take down the CCP. They formed up this club to join together and to inviting people with like-minded people together into the G Club. So this, of course, this very nature made the CCP very unhappy. So, but what is happening in this case is very horrifying, because a certain US DOJ personnel met with the CCP's All United Front Work Department officials in Beijing. And the said personnel from the US provided information about the dissidents resided in the Communist China who joined the G Club. What is even more horrifying is follow through after the meeting, which was not very long, very shortly after the meeting, was that these dissidents located in the Communist China were found by the CCP's prosecutors and police. And now these members were held at gunpoint and under duress to give false testimonies against the G Club. Now, let's take a look at a section from Mr. Miles Gore's grand live stream, because this is not my own words, but this is what really happened. Field director, can we play the sections of the video so to our
我们 G
audiences?
Club 的会员
Thank you.
被美国司法部门找到中国统战部，由中国的统战部带着检察官、带着警察到家堵到门里边，拿枪顶着，按照我说的写下举报 G Club。我说的话你们都记住每个字儿，因为我说的话都会上庭的。啊，有多少这样 G Club 会员？超过170名。美国司法部的黑手能到中国去，通过统战部，就是统战美国的部，找到战友，敲开门，拿枪顶着，写下来揭发举报 G Club。
Okay, that is the clip from Mr. Miles Gore's grand live stream, and we actually played this part because we have to raise the entire awareness about how horrifying it is, and how horrifying it is the extent of the CCP's infiltration to the judicial system of the United States has become. So now, I've already presented all these facts here. We have a lot of questions to consider, because when you start putting all these facts together, there are a lot of things, a lot of questions that respond into our mind. So let's continue to see what these questions we shall ask ourselves. Let's continue. Okay, so number one, the most important question to ask is, why did the Department of Justice of the United States meet with the officials of the CCP's intelligence department and give the list of Chinese dissidents to the CCP? Not the list, I'm sorry, but give the information of the Chinese dissidents to the CCP. Well, about this bullet point, remember, DOJ is an American federal government department it's an American federal government department, and the CCP's UFWD that is being certified by the MI5 and several other governmental branches of the Western countries. That the UFWD, the United Front Work Department, is an intelligence apparatus of the CCP. The federal government department meeting with the CCP's intelligence apparatus. Think about this. Think about this among yourselves. I don't have to say anymore. The second questions we have to ask: how come did the false testimonies made under coercion and torture can be accepted as evidences by the SEC? Given the fact that we have already talked about the Department of Justice of the United States, some people, a person from that department meet with the officials of the CCP's intelligence department, which is the UFWD. Can we really exclude the possibilities that some people suffered the same fate as we've mentioned above? The third question is, why did the PAX, an entity subsidiary to the PAG, refuse to answer questions asked by the GTV on how they get the confidential banking information? And this banking information is prohibited from being published to the public by the American law. Especially if there's nothing to hide by the PAX, why did they refuse to answer this simple question? So the last question in this point, we have really asked ourselves is that can we really exclude the possibility that the lack of specific date of returning the GTV funds to the investors after 1 year of receiving the money from GTV is also the result of the CCP's infiltration and its influence campaign? These 4 questions, I don't try to push anything to anyone, any of our viewers here, but these 4 questions are the 4 questions should be asked after we have seen these events that we have presented in this live stream here tonight. So the last question you may ask me, why do I have to care about this case? I have a lot of things to worry about. Because, well, we have helped to find out a lot of reasons that is really existed and are factually existed, that are very relatable to every single person who is residing in the United States. It does not matter whether you are a citizen, it doesn't matter whether you are a residential alien. Well, the number 1 point here is that the CCP created, released, and purposefully spread the bioweapon, which is SARS-CoV-2, known as COVID-19, and which caused the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the CCP manufactured key components of the unsafe and harmful vaccine, which is the COVID-19 vaccine. So we have to ask ourselves, will the CCP deploy the next bioweapon to achieve its goal to control the world? What we are sure for now is the longer the CCP survives, the more harm it will bring towards the rest of the world. And also, the CCP infiltrated the DOJ and the SEC to persecute Chinese dissidents in the United States. And we have to say that if this kind of thing can happen by utilizing the US federal government's departments inside the legal system, then similar method would be applied to every single American citizen if the American citizens block the way of the CCP to enslave the world. That means that if the CCP deems anything that an American citizen said is threatening to its own rule, then it can, using similar methods, using DOJ, weaponizing these departments to target against that particular American citizen. So the departure from the judicial justice by the DOJ and SEC, that it's indeed threatening to every single person who resided in the United States, whether or not you are a citizen. And if the DOJ is weaponized by a foreign power out of the purpose of politics of anything, as the GDV investors endured and also the G Club members have endured, that will become a very grave, present and clear danger to the basis of the judicial system, and any injustices that existed in any place is a threat to the justice for not only for me, not only for you, for every one of us. It doesn't matter whether you sit on the other side of the screen, it threatens you. So now, we are close to the end of the live stream. Let's take a quick look and update, of course, at some of these people who have involved in the CCP's unrestricted lawfare against Mr. Miles Guo. So these are the people who have involved in the CCP unrestricted lawfare against Mr. Miles Guo and, of course, against the Chinese dissidents who have escaped the Communist China. Bruno Zhengwu is the masterhead behind the lawfare, with several other characters, including Wei Jianshan and his found PAG. Now, we shared George Higginbotham, Joe Low, Nicky Lam Davis, who have all pleaded guilty, with Higginbotham and Joe Low facing new charges and Nicky Lam Davis being sentenced to 2.5 years in jail. So now, we are now coming to an end of the live stream, so please stay tuned. We will be looking into more about the CCP's infiltration and the threat that brought forth by the CCP's tyrannical rule to the United States and to the rest of the free world in the next episode of our live stream. I'm your host, David Stolwacher, and thank you for joining me tonight. And I all wish you be well and a happy late Chinese New Year. Good night.
The noise of gunfire rose from all over the center of Peking.
We're into march. 10 minutes clear. Why? Why? I think this is my duty.
不是什么神秘人物，不是什么富翁，这个都是过去媒体因为不了解、不知道嘛，